There are so many different types of foods throughout the world, and just like every country has their own iconic dish, the hamburger is one of the most recognizable foods in America. But what makes hamburgers unique from other dishes is their worldwide appeal, thanks to America's status as a superpower and cultural influence throughout the world. But you may be asking, where did the hamburger come from, and why did it become so popular? The earliest record of what we now call a patty can trace back to a 4th century Roman cookbook, in which it mentions a dish called the Icenia aumentata, which along with minced meat uses a variety of spices including garum to form a patty. These early patties were served among the upper and lower classes, and it's likely that a bun was added to form an early burger, but after the collapse of Rome, the recipe fell into obscurity. But it wasn't the Icenia aumentata that gave way to the hamburger. Fast forward to the 13th century, the Mongols would reintroduce the patty to Europe with their own patty, the steak tartare, in which true contact or occupation, depending on who you are, would eventually incorporate into their own cuisine, namely Russia, who added chopped onions and raw eggs to give it more flavor. In the 17th century, the steak tartare would make its way to Germany, who called it tartare steak, which will eventually become Hamburg steak. Fun fact, due to the popularity of hamburgers, the Hamburg steak was renamed the Frikadelle in Germany to avoid confusion. With Hamburg being the largest port in Europe during the late 18th century, sailors from America would bring back the Hamburg steak home, with many food carts in New York offering Hamburg steak or steak cooked in the Hamburg style to attract German sailors. Hamburg steak would become more widespread in the US after the 1848 German Revolution, where a large number of German immigrants arrived to the US, bringing the Hamburg steak with them. As for who invented the hamburger is a mystery. The first people who claimed to invent the burger was in 1885 by Frank and Charles Mensch. The story goes that one day, during a county fair in New York, the brothers had run out of pork sausages for their hot dogs, as their local butchers were off that day. So, to compensate, they used the available meat they had and came up with a patty before serving it between 2 pieces of bread to customers. It's said that the brothers named the new sandwich the Hamburger, based on the location where the fair was held. The second claim was in 1900, by a restaurant named Louis Lunch Wagon, which is still in operation today. The story goes that Louis was a frugal man who didn't like throwing away extra beef into the trash. So he collected the extra scraps of meat and turned it into a patty before putting 2 pieces of toasted bread and sold it as a new recipe to customers wanting a to-go meal, as many of his customers were factory workers. The third claim is in 1904, during a Louisiana Purchase exhibition, where a reporter wrote an article about the inventor's sandwich, allegedly calling the new sandwich the Hamburger. The vendor was believed to be a Texan named Fletch Davis, who claimed to own a restaurant, where he came up with the idea of the hamburger by frying a chunk of hamburger meat to form a patty and place it between 2 homemade buns, similar of that of the modern hamburger, before adding a huge slice of onion into the burger. There are more claims to the invention I cannot list, but it's important to take these stories as a grain of salt, as these stories can be easily falsified or misinterpreted. What we can learn from these stories is that the burger was developed independently by different individuals, and it's likely that the idea of a burger predates the claims listed, but were either lost to history or never made public. Regardless who made it, the 1904 Louisiana Purchase exhibition gave widespread attention to the hamburger, with Fletch Davis's burger serving as a basis for the modern hamburger. The first restaurant centered around hamburgers was White Castle in 1921, which not only made hamburgers go mainstream, but also kickstart the fast food industry. A number of restaurants would soon open throughout the 1920s. In the 1930s, cheese was added into the hamburger, leading to the creation of the cheeseburger. During this time, Popeye the Sailor introduced a new character called Wimpy, whose personality centered around eating hamburgers and conning people into buying him one. Wimpy's popularity would help solidify hamburger's mainstream status, as a fast food chain would be named after him. In 1940, two brothers by the name of Dick and Mac would open its first McDonald's restaurant. Using the Ford as a model, they could produce twice as many hamburgers for half the price, in addition to standardizing their menu to ensure that all of their locations offer the same taste of their burgers. These factors make McDonald's stand out from the rest, and it will become the dominant fast food chain in America. Following McDonald's success, other hamburger chains such as Burger King, Carl's Jr., Jack in the Box, and many others tried to compete in the ever-growing hamburger market. As fast food chains began expanding internationally in the 1960s, many of them localized their menus to appeal to each respective country, while keeping the hamburger as their main selling point. One example was McDonald's localization in France, which for a long time had a stigma against hamburgers until the 1990s, when McDonald's introduced the Fancy Burger to appeal to a French audience, in addition to making the restaurant more like a cafe you see in Starbucks, which is why McDonald's in other countries are so different from each other, even though they're from the same company. Today, McDonald's is one of the largest fast food chains in the world, with more than 39,000 locations, serving over 100 countries, and making $21 billion in revenue, with no sign for McDonald's stopping anytime soon. But regardless of someone living in an isolated community or an actual ethno-state that the left wants to ignore, hamburgers along with pizza have essentially taken over the world. From its humble beginnings to a global phenomenon, the hamburger is a story of a simple idea that became a manifestation of America and capitalism itself, which is here to stay for years to come. If only McDonald's bring back their sweet barbecue bacon burger.